can you really survive? Because consulting, while it seems a rosy world from outside, it's also very competitive. क्या ये रोल मेरे लिए है, क्या मैं कर सकता हूँ, क्या मैं गलत जगह आ गया हूँ, right? I and another person, both of us were, almost rock stars of, SIG in Piramal. The first sort of deck that we sent to the co-founder of Satwa, he had given us comments only on basic formatting. तो हमें लगा कि यार content ही नहीं पढ़ा इन्होंने तो. Here in BCG, everybody is a class topper. Everybody is a university topper. Everybody is from, damn IIT and IIM, right? So everybody has been in the top 5% of their classes. And there is no shame in accepting कि भाई तुमको नहीं आता है. Right? And wherever it is, like I reached with almost 9 years of experience at BCG, and then again I asked कि भाई how are you really doing this, right? To a very senior guy, कि आप कैसे करते हो ये, मुझे नहीं आता है, क्या आप सिखाओगे मुझे? Like when you fall ill, when an individual fall ill, they go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
When a business fall ill, where do they go?
Consulting.
Right? It's consulting, right?
नमस्कार दोस्तों, नए साल में आप सभी दर्शकों का हार्दिक स्वागत है. द सोशल पर्पस विशेस आवर व्यूअर्स वेरी हैप्पी न्यू ईयर. मे दिस ईयर ब्रिंग्स आवर व्यूअर्स अ लॉट ऑफ हैप्पीनेस एंड सक्सेस. दोस्तों, द सोशल पर्पस आपके लिए नॉलेज एंड प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंसेस का खजाना लेकर आ रहा है, जिसके अंतर्गत हम देश के सोशल एंटरप्रेन्योर्स एंड सीनियर इम्पैक्ट कंसल्टेंट्स की कहानियां लेकर आ रहे हैं, जिसके जरिए आपको मौका मिल रहा है इन लीडर्स के प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंसेस से सीखने का और नॉन प्रॉफिट एंड इम्पैक्ट कंसल्टेंसी सेक्टर के बारे में जानने का कि ये कैसे सामाजिक बदलाव में योगदान दे रहे हैं और कैसे हमारे युवा इस बदलाव का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं. दोस्तों, अब तक होप 24 सीरीज के 2 एपिसोड्स आ चुके हैं. अगर अभी तक आपने इन 2 एपिसोड्स को नहीं देखा है, यू मस्ट सी दीज इनसाइटफुल एपिसोड्स थ्रू द लिंक इन डिस्क्रिप्शन. और अगर आपको हमारा ये पर्पस ड्रिवन युवाओं को एम्पावर करने का प्रयास पसंद आता है, तो प्लीज लाइक, कमेंट, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब द सोशल पर्पस. चलिए दोस्तों, शुरू करते हैं आज का नया एपिसोड. और आज के इस एपिसोड में हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं एक नए मेहमान जो एक एक्सपीरियंस कंसल्टेंट हैं और वर्तमान में वो बॉस्टन कंसल्टिंग ग्रुप में टीम लीड के रूप में कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं. वेरी वार्म वेलकम टू दिस सेशन आकाश जी. आकाश जी ने इससे पहले सत्वा और पिरामल फाउंडेशन जैसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में स्ट्रैटेजिक रोल्स में योगदान दिया है.
Thank you, Alok, for inviting me to your podcast. I'm really excited and equally excited for both these podcasts and the name that you have actually given to this podcast, Hope 24. Yes, let's get started.
This podcast, we're very Akash ji to share about yourself and a lot of buzz is about consultancies. Let's our viewer understand what exactly this consultancy thing is.
Sure. तो मैं थोड़ा सा अपना परिचय के साथ शुरू करता हूँ. एक बहुत ही छोटे शहर वर्तमान करके एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट है वेस्ट बंगाल में, वहाँ से बिलोंग करता हूँ. और मेरी स्कूलिंग कोलकाता में हुई है. फिर उसके बाद मैंने इंजीनियरिंग जादवपुर यूनिवर्सिटी से पढ़ा है. तो अगर मैं कहूँ कि मेरी सोशल इम्पैक्ट का जो कीड़ा है वो कहाँ से आया, वो आया है जादवपुर यूनिवर्सिटी से. And I think the environment that the university provided me actually pushed me to ask strong questions to really rattle the status quo. कि जो भी चलते आ रहा है, जो भी चले आ रहा है, क्या उसको आप मान लोगे, या फिर जो नहीं आपको समझ आ रहा है, जो आपको लग रहा है कि सही नहीं है, क्या उसको आप सवाल करोगे, राइट? तो एंड जो लोग जानते हैं जादवपुर, JNU, इस तरीके की यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में, वो लोग जानते हैं कि थोड़ा सा पॉलिटिकली स्टिमुलेटिंग इन्वायरमेंट होता है. एंड मैंने भी अपनी जर्नी की शुरुआत उसी पॉलिटिक्स के साथ शुरू किया था. एंड बहुत ज़्यादा सवाल मेरे अंदर ये बड़ा सवाल मेरे अंदर ये था कि हम जो छोटे कस्बों गाँव से उठ के आते हैं और जो इन जैसे स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में पढ़ते हैं, क्या इन युवाओं के लिए मौका है, क्या इन युवाओं के लिए मौका है कि वो अपने ख्वाहिशें, अपने परिवार की ख्वाहिशों को फुलफिल कर पाए, एंड उसके लिए क्या, एंड उसके साथ साथ क्या वो समाज के लिए भी कुछ काम कर पाए, राइट? तो इंजीनियरिंग के दौरान ही थोड़ा बहुत ये किया था. एंड उसी के साथ साथ मैंने उस दौरान कुछ स्लम एरियाज़ में बच्चों को पढ़ाने की क्या शुरू किया. एंड उसी के साथ साथ जब फाइनल ईयर आया, फाइनल ईयर के साथ साथ इन्फोसिस करके कंपनी में नौकरी लगी. अभी इन्फोसिस बहुत चर्चा में थी बिकॉज ऑफ द co-founder comment on long work hours. And then I went there for 1 month and I figured out कि this is not my cup of tea. मेरे से ये हो नहीं रहा था. I felt very bored out of it. एंड उससे पहले मैंने एक गांधी फेलोशिप करके एक प्रोग्राम है, उसको उस पर मैंने इंटरव्यू दिया था. वो बहुत ही बेहतरीन इंटरव्यू था. was the first time when I was not being interviewed. I was given an opportunity to ask as many as questions that I had to the people who was interviewing me. एंड बहुत ही सुंदर सा एक प्रोसेस था जहाँ पे मतलब वन ऑफ द टास्क दैट वाज गिवन टू अस एज अ टीम हु वाज पार्ट ऑफ द interviewee group is to sort of, if you were to create a nation, how would you make the laws, right? What would be the national anthem? What would you base your national anthem on? What values would you sort of propagate in that country? So I think those kind of questions really brought the best out of me to really contribute and felt intrigued कि अच्छा ऐसे भी सवाल कोई कर रहा है, right? And I felt very excited about कि अरे मेरे तरह भी लोग हैं जो शायद थोड़ा हटके कुछ करना चाहते हैं. तो आफ्टर 1 month आई स्ट्रेट अवे वेंट इनटू द फेलोशिप, एंड तब मुझे इतना पता नहीं था कि फेलोशिप में क्या था, क्या है क्या नहीं है. मुझे बस इतना पता था कि 4 बार आपको गांव में रहने का मौका मिलेगा. तो मुझे लगा कि बहुत सही एक्सपीरियंस है. मैंने अपने घर पे बताया कि देखो एमटेक भी 2 साल का होता है, मास्टर्स की जगह मैं एक ये एक्सपीरियंशियल फेलोशिप करना चाहता हूँ, थोड़ा अपने देश को जाने का मौका मिलेगा. तो घर में तो थोड़ा बहुत कहा सुनी हुई, बट आई एंडेड अप sort of landing in a remote village in Rajasthan called Asisar. तो वहाँ से मेरी जर्नी शुरुआत हुई, एंड व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड वर्किंग एंड मतलब जो भी गांधी फेलोशिप से जुड़े हुए हैं या कोई भी फेलोशिप से जुड़े हुए हैं, ज़्यादातर लोगों को ये पता है कि एक बहुत ही कोर काम होता है इन फेलोशिप में. इट्स नॉट जस्ट कि थियरी क्लासेस होते हैं, नॉट जस्ट कि लेक्चर्स होते हैं, बट ऑल्सो एक कोर हैंड्स ऑन प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस आपको करने के लिए मौका दिया जाता है. तो हमारा काम था, तब हम 5 स्कूल हमें दिए जाते थे, सरकारी स्कूल, एंड हमारा बेसिकली गोल ये था कि 2 साल आप जब फेलोशिप में हो, उन 5 स्कूलों को ट्रांसफॉर्म करना है, उन 5 स्कूलों की लर्निंग आउटकम्स को इम्प्रूव करना है, उनकी कम्युनिटीज़ के साथ जुड़ के उनके साथ काम करना है, उनके हेडमास्टर्स टीचर्स को मोटिवेट करना है ताकि वो अपने स्पैन ऑफ एरिया में बेटर कर पाए. पर मैं जब गया, मेरे लिए वैसे स्कूल मतलब I have been fortunate to study in a Gurukul system where everything was very organized. I studied in Ramakrishna Mission, which was quite resourceful in nature. But when I went and started teaching those kids in rural Rajasthan, I felt bad. In very harsh winters, people were, these students were sitting, on bare floor. जैसे सरकारी स्कूल होता है, रिसोर्सेज की क्रंच होती है, बट स्टिल देयर वर टीचर्स हु वर वेरी मोटिवेटेड. आई थिंक बहुत ज़्यादा चर्चा ये होती है कि सरकारी स्कूलों में पढ़ाई नहीं होती है. मेरा एक्सपीरियंस काफ़ी अलग रहा है. मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारे टीचर्स हैं इन्हीं सरकारी स्कूल्स में जो एक्चुअली बच्चों को पढ़ाने का मौका देते हैं, एंड वो अपना बेस्ट देते हैं ताकि ये बच्चे पढ़ पाए. एंड वाइल आई वॉज taken aback by the lack of resources, by the lack of opportunities for these students who were studying in these government schools as compared to many of their peers who might be studying in best of the world schools in premium cities. At the same time, I was also very hopeful that there are way too many teachers who are really wanting to uplift this situation given the resource constraint. And innovation का असली मायना मुझे तब समझ में आया कि given this resource constraint, the way these teachers are really innovating classroom teaching was really inspiring for me. तो इस दोनों conundrum के साथ मैं जिया, एंड उसके बाद मुझे बहुत ही मतलब फिर उसके बाद जब मैं फेलोशिप में गया, the 2 big things that really sort of kicked in me is one, actually 3 big things. One is this conundrum of ki hope and a bit of morbid situation that I was experiencing, कि देश का reality ऐसा है. At the same time, my batch, the kind of people who came, that was a lot of cohesive force. Everybody wanted to do something good from different parts of the country. Huge diversity from Kashmir to Kanyakumari to Gujarat to West Bengal, right? Like all over the country. And then the third part is that broadly everybody had a mission. Everybody wanted to really build the nation together, right? So I felt I really felt inspired by the collective vision of the organization as well as my peers who were there as co-fellows, and the opportunity for which I'm forever grateful that I could actually experience and do something for better in these communities that I worked for the 2 years. तो वहाँ से मेरा जर्नी शुरुआत हुआ, एंड उसके बाद मैंने कभी पीछे मुड़ के नहीं देखा. तो आजकल मैं जब भी खुद को इंट्रोड्यूस करता हूँ, मैं सिर्फ यही बोलता हूँ, एंड खास करके BCG जैसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, बॉस्टन कंसल्टिंग ग्रुप, इट्स अ tier 1 कंसल्टिंग फर्म Largely, people do management consulting where people are bothered about bottom line, top line of big corporates. And जब मैं इंट्रोड्यूस करता हूँ मैंने जिंदगी में सिर्फ एक ही काम किया है वो सोशल इम्पैक्ट पीपल रियली गिव अ डिफरेंट लुक कि ऐसा भी करियर होता है राइट so yeah, so I like post Gandhi Fellowship, I stayed with Piramal Foundation for almost 3.5 years. Out of those 3.5 years, I worked with Niti Aayog for almost 2 years on their aspirational district program. Post which I was with Satwa Consulting almost 3.5 years. Variety of projects from and different kind of topics, from having to work with an organization strategy of an organization called Breakthrough India, who actually sort of helped in bringing in the Domestic Violence Act in India, to an organization who was focusing on respectful maternity care. When mothers go to birthing centers or maternity wards, they experience a lot of obstetric violence. Pinching hota hai, thappar marte hain, right? Abuse, verbal abuse hota hai. They were trying to work on these kind of issues, and then was also working with organizations or a coalition of organizations to actually instill social emotional learning in school curriculums in one of the tribal state of India, etc. So varied type ka kaam kiya, and then here I am with Boston Consulting Group almost a year down. Joined in January 2023, almost a year with BCG as well. So yeah, slightly longish introduction, but yeah, just wanted to share a bit of my story.
I must say it's a really insightful, unconventional and meaningful journey. And I'd like to ask you this question: why you choose the path of consultancies? Because there are a number of options after, like you could have gone for entrepreneurship or other ways. Why you choose the path of consultancies?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question, and I would say it's a mix of couple of things, right? So during the fag end of the fellowship, there is a process that we used to run called private dream articulation, right? Which is basically a process to say कि आपको जिंदगी में क्या करना है, and the question that we were being asked is कि where do you see yourself in next 10 years, right? Don't think that question is any more relevant post COVID, but at that point of time that was a very big daunting question to me. So I always knew that I enjoy doing social impact. I enjoy reading about social issues, contributing to meaningful work, impactful work, speaking with loads of people on ground, or etc. But it was very difficult for me to really pinpoint an issue. I felt कि मतलब आप कोई भी इशू में काम कर लो, आप हेल्थ केयर में कर लो, एजुकेशन में कर लो, लाइवलीहुड में कर लो, जेंडर में कर लो, आप जिंदगी में कोई एक इशू पकड़ लो, मतलब इट्स गुड एनफ फॉर यू टू रियली मेक अ डेंट, राइट? एंड उसमें भी अगर आप डेंट क्रिएट कर पाए तो, राइट? So for me it was very difficult to actually pinpoint, and at that point in time I felt कि चलो I really want to explore कि what does working with variety of issues look like, right? That was one driving force for me to really look for diversity in work. So for me that was important. Second thing, one of the question that my co-fellow asked me, saying कि यार what can you spend a day with, right? So I gave a very boring answer to say कि अगर आप मुझे एक एक्सेल शीट में 100 रो दे हुए और बोलो कि इसको नंबर क्रंच करना है, I could spend a day with that, right? And I really loved crunching numbers at that point. Basic fact about that is कि I like to solve newer problems every day. कि मेरे लिए वो बहुत ही किक वाला फैक्टर होता है कि मुझे हर दिन उठ के एक नया प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना है. That's the second thing. The third thing, sadly I feel in this sector the jobs are really low paying, right? And as I said, for me when a lot of my peers sort of went for good flashy corporate jobs in the beginning, I had built up my career almost ground up in the social impact sector, right? And consulting is one of those few organizations in social sector who pays you decently well, right? So I would also say that money was a factor for me, and I typically say this unapologetically, given that people like me who have actually struggled over a period of time financially because of the financial situation of my family, I really want to give them a comfortable life going forward, right? So I think these are the 3 reasons for me to really end up in consulting.
It's a truly candid and real answers. I would like to know 3 to 4 challenges that you have seen in this 9 to 10 years of journey.
Yeah, there have been many. I mean, I'll tell some of them. I remember, and you were also witness of that journey. I
Right.
remember two of us, program leaders at that point of time with almost 20 fellows. We landed in Gurgaon, and we had zero clue, no clue that हम क्या करने वाले हैं, right? And we were just fresh out of fellowship. हम कितने 24 साल के थे. But a big sense of responsibility at that point of hit to say कि यार तुम्हारे पास ऐसे 19-20 फेलो है, मतलब तुमको इनके साथ you also have to do justice with their time. उनको engage करना है, उनको meaningful काम में deploy करने हैं, all of that stuff. तो बहुत ही overwhelming सा emotion था तब कि क्या करेंगे, क्योंकि बहुत कम guidance थी. But it also gave a very strong entrepreneurial kick कि यार देखो तुम्हें नहीं पता है, but the sky is the only limit. आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो.
Right.
So I think that was something that I remember was very overwhelming. Second, I feel when I transitioned from Piramal to Satwa, I remember that the first few months I was also questioning my ability कि am I really made for consulting? आप करना तो चाहते हो, but क्योंकि people over there were also very fast, right? And equally good. And can you really survive? Because consulting, while it seems a rosy world from outside, it's also very competitive, right? Because everybody is a high performer, everybody reaches there because they have performed well in some set of roles. And when I reached there, similar set of questions saying कि क्या ये role मेरे लिए है, क्या मैं कर सकता हूँ, क्या मैं गलत जगह आ गया हूँ, right? And I remember before coming to Satwa, there was like I almost had 200-300 odd PPTs, right? But every organization has a new style of writing their own slides. I remember I and another person, both of us were almost rock stars of SIG in Piramal. The first sort of deck that we sent to the co-founder of Satwa, he had given us comments only on basic formatting. तो हमें लगा कि यार कंटेंट ही नहीं पढ़ा इन्होंने, तो फॉर्मेटिंग पे कमेंट भेज दिया और हम खुद को तो रॉक स्टार समझ रहे थे, राइट? तो बहुत ज्यादा मेहनत करके आई जस्ट केप्ट इट अप सेइंग कि अच्छा चलो कोई बात नहीं, ऐसा क्या चीज होगा जो सीखा नहीं जा सकता है, राइट? यू जस्ट हैव टू लर्न. That helped I rose up the ranks very quickly at Satwa. And similar set of experience happened in BCG again, right? Like even in BCG, if I say almost I reached BCG almost with 9 years of experience in the sector, almost 6 years in consulting, etc. But here in BCG, everybody is a class topper, everybody is a university topper, everybody is from damn IIT and IIM, right? So everybody has been in the top 5% of their classes, right? So again, it's a very competitive world, and when I reached here, the first set of few months supremely overwhelming. And I was even thinking to really speak with Satwa co-founders again to say कि कुछ जगह वापस है क्या, वापस चले जाते हैं, right? Yeah, so I feel there have been numerous challenges, etc. But I feel the broader resilience and the mindset of ki nothing is unlearnable, right? Everything is learnable, right? It's just that you have to really understand how people are saying things, how people are doing things, and there is no shame in accepting कि भाई तुमको नहीं आता है, right? And wherever it is, like I reached with almost 9 years of experience at BCG, and then again I asked कि भाई how are you really doing this, right? To a very senior guy कि आप कैसे करते हो ये, मुझे नहीं आता है, क्या आप सिखाओगे मुझे, right? So another thing that I also want to talk about, because a lot of our audience is youth. कॉन्फिडेंस एक बहुत कमाल की चीज होती है, राइट? तो मैं एक ऑथर का बहुत बड़ा फैन हूँ कॉल्ड एडम ग्रांट. सो ही यूजेस अ टर्म कॉल्ड कॉन्फिडेंट ह्यूमिलिटी, राइट? where he basically is saying कि देखो there is a fine line between overconfidence and underconfidence, right? And that is called confident humility, which is basically to say कि देखो आप में इतना confidence है to actually stand up to your potential, but उतना humility भी है to accept कि आपको क्या नहीं आता है. So I feel that over a period of time it's important that आप अपने आप में confidence मत कम कीजिएगा, क्योंकि अगर आप कहीं अभी तक आए हो तो कुछ ना कुछ तो आपके फेवर में काम किया होगा, राइट? एंड आपने कुछ ना कुछ you have picked up through your journey. So it's important to not lose that confidence, but also at the same point of time be aware कि आपको क्या नहीं आता है. And everybody loves honesty. There is no substitute of honesty, right? If you feel that you can actually play around with people and move it out showing your overconfidence, then you are the probably biggest fool in the world, because nobody, the other person who's actually engaging with you is equally if not more smart enough, right?
True.
So So yeah, so I feel confidence is a very interesting thing कि जब आपके पास सही मात्रा में होता है, you can actually do wonders. Some of these have been a few learnings over the course of my life.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing your vulnerabilities very candidly. You have shared about resilience, hard work, and that thought. Every viewer can resonate with this. In that spirit, that confidence is very important. So let's move ahead to our next question. How do consultancies operate in the social service sector?
Yeah, so that's a important point. So I'll talk about two things here. One is how does consulting organization sell themselves, right? कि हम क्या करते हैं. And then I'll also talk about how does other people see consulting firms, and that's a funny story between both of these, right? And what are some of the pros and cons that I believe, having spent time. So typically think of this, right? Like when you fall ill, when an individual fall ill, they go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
When a business fall ill, where do they go?
Consulting.
Right? Yeah. It's consulting, right? So think of consulting firms as typically doctors for businesses. But in a way that the only dynamics that changes between a doctor patient versus a business consulting partnership is where a doctor and patient, the power dynamics is slightly more towards the doctor way, because there is a evident understanding that from the patient that the doctor knows, right? And it is almost similar in this space wherein the consulting firm always thinks that the business knows how to do, right? It's just that somebody has to be there as a third eye for them to really see, right? And then there are things that people typically say, and that I also believe are to be true, is to say that when businesses fall sick, which is, say for example, they are leaking profits, they are leaking margins, they really want to enter into a new market, they really want to launch a new product, right? Or they want to diversify their business, or they want to do a very big merger, right, etc., etc. Or they really want to transform the way they are operating today, right? They want to be a lot more agile, they want to be a lot more tech based, etc., etc. These are the kind of problems that they come to consulting firms with, right? And now, what does a consulting firm add value? Yeah. So there are three forms of value addition that a consulting firm does. At a highest level, a consulting firm almost operates like an extended outside CEO, right? Okay. Which is basically to say, ki bhai dekho, as a consulting firm, let's say the leads who oversee some of these projects have spent almost equal time with as the CEO of the company, not in this specific area, not in this specific business domain, but that actually allows them to be a lot more unhinged, unbiased, right? So they can actually provide a lot more objective third-party view to how the business is operating or how the market is operating overall. The second kind of value addition that a lot of that the consulting firms typically bring to the table is synthesizing music from noise, right? Because in the industry today there are a lot of noise. So for example, आप just AI in HR search, right? There would be 100 odd articles out there in Google who is talking about this is how you should lead your company towards adopting AI for human resource efficiencies, right? But which perspective to follow through, right? कौन सा सही होगा, क्योंकि not all organizations are same. Somebody has to really go through these 100 odd papers and contextualize basis your own organization, right? That's the second kind of value add that consulting organizations do. Third, I feel consulting organizations are in a unique position to be a system orchestrator, right? Say for example, in the social impact space, consulting firms speak with NGOs, they speak with governments, they speak with corporates, they speak with multilaterals, right? They can actually bring everybody together under a particular forum, and there have been few successful attempts in India as well, right? So I feel these are the very strong value add from a consulting point of view. So these are the three big value adds that I feel consulting firms provide to the organization. There are also critics about consulting firms. So funny story, right? So while I was interviewing at Satwa and I was just about to leave Piramal Foundation, one of our very senior program director came to me and asked, Akash, एक बात बताओ कि यार ये consultants क्या करते हैं, तो मैंने बोला कि क्या करते हैं, आपको क्या लगता है क्या करते हैं? तो ही वाज सेइंग कि यार हमसे ही सवाल पूछे, हमने ही जवाब दिया, उसी जवाब को सुंदर सुंदर पीपीटी में डाल दिया और वही जवाब हमको दिखा के बोल रहे हैं कि देखो हमें ये पता चला है। तो तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है हुआ क्या ये।
Right.
तो मैंने बोला बात तो आपका सही है कि इनका काम ये है कि आपसे ही सुनना और आपसे सुन के सिंथेसाइज करके वही बात सुंदर तरीके से लिख के आपको बताना।
Right.
And you know, this has been a bigger sort of critics about consulting firms, and which is basically to say कि very early businesses and those who are actually going through a 0 to 1 kind of a journey see very little value in consulting, right? And that's also because either the kind of business advices that these consulting firms provide to startups is not right, or the startups are not that mature to get consulting advice at that point in time. But the larger criticism of consulting is to say ki the advice comes with a very hefty price,
Right.
projects are very very costly, and is it worth to actually sort of spend that much of money for consulting advice? And I think the biggest learning for me in that space is basically to say ki you have to be extremely clear that what do you want your consultants to do, right? If you yourself is unclear or ambiguous कि देखो मुझे ऐसा कुछ solve करना है, वो ऐसा कुछ का कैसा कुछ भी देके चले जाएंगे तो आपको नहीं पता, right?
Right.
So that's one big criticism. The other big criticism is to say कि यार consultants are very jargony, कि मतलब 4-5 बड़े बड़े शब्द बोल देंगे. Probably I must have also said that in this interview.
Right.
And they also think that the other person could probably understand that.
Right.
And probably that's a training failure कि layman language इतना आसानी से बोल नहीं पाते हैं क्योंकि सारे लोग एक टाइप की भाषा बोलते हैं. And that's a larger criticism to say कि यार consultants can't work with layman folks,
Yeah.
right? So I think these are also some of the criticisms that's there, and just also extend its conversation, right? To say कि when you have to really think about choosing a career in consulting, what are some of the pros and cons that you should think about, right? So as I said before, some of the pros are definitely diversity in learning, very fast paced learning, right? क्योंकि अब हर 3 महीने में आपको नया प्रोजेक्ट मिल रहा है और उस प्रोजेक्ट का आपको कुछ नहीं पता, एंड आप ऐसे एक व्यक्ति को एडवाइस कर रहे हो जिन्होंने शायद अपने 20 साल उसी प्रॉब्लम में बिताया है, राइट? सो योर लर्निंग क्वेश्चन हैज टू बी वे फास्टर, कि आपको बहुत जल्दी पिकअप करना पड़ेगा चीजें, एंड you have to apply that strong problem solving lens again and again, right? That's a very I feel therefore the fast paced learning opportunity and the diversity in learning is very really great in consulting. Second, as I said, they pay you really well, even better than most of the jobs, right? And then the third is also the kind of doors that some of these brands open for you, right? Ki because people understand that this brand does not offer people with a label, but also a lot of grind that people might have gone through to be able to move out of this system, right? Like I always tell to people, somebody who spends 2 years in BCG, grind ही इतना है कि वो अपने आप sharp हो जाएगा, right? तो or probably in Satwa kind of organizations as well. So these are some of the pros that I would say. Some of the cons I would also say that the work-life balance is really fucked up, right? Sorry for using that language, but basically you should know कि आपका 9 से 6 काम नहीं होने वाला है, आपका almost 10, 12, 14 घंटे का day schedule होने वाला है, and you should only prepare yourself for that. Second, extremely cutthroat competitive environment होता है. Some of these big MBBs, right, like the McKinsey, BCGs and Bains of the world, almost 20-25% of the firm gets chucked out every year. The low performers are chucked out every year. उनके पास कोई गुंजाइश नहीं होता है कि वो रह के सीखे, right? So it's a very cutthroat competitive world. And third, there is also a lot of because there is a lot of travel involved, a lot of lifestyle issues comes in. तो अगर आपको steady, consistent routine kind of maintain करना है, थोड़ा सा मुश्किल है. So I mean, basically these are some of the pros and cons that people should think about while thinking about consulting.
Right. As we move to non-profit to consultancies, and as we see, consultancies are profit-oriented and they require a lot of business acumen, right? And also, why these consultancies consider someone from non-profit, right?
No, I would say, see, some of these are also myths, right? I feel that everybody is thinking about revenue. It's just are you thinking? So I would say not revenue. Everybody is thinking about money,
Yeah.
right? A non-profit is thinking about money in form of grants.
Right.
Business is thinking money in terms of revenue and profits. Social enterprise is thinking about marrying those profits for a impact cause, right?
Yeah.
So everybody is thinking about that dollar, right? That's for sure. Second, I feel that why would somebody need people from impact sector? So typically what happens is these kind of transitions are not common in big threes, right? The Bain, BCG, McKinsey's of the world. Just because I have without doing an MBA, it's difficult. Without doing an MBA or a tier 1 college like IITs, it's difficult to get through, to be honest. What is happening currently is that, especially in the social impact sector, right? Like, I'm not talking about broader consulting, especially in the social impact sector, what's happening is that, and even also in some parts of the broader business environment, that clients are now moving from a generalist advice to a lot more expertise driven advice. Like being a CEO of an education nonprofit or a senior IS officer of a state government, you would always like to get an advice from a generalist MBA person versus somebody like a person like you and me who have spent years in the field to understand, to actually dissect issues and bring out the insights and bubble up the insights at the right level to them, right?
Right.
People are valuing sense of ground, sense of reality, sense of business, sense of experience of having done that, than somebody probably who's the smartest guy in the room, well read, have a great degree from one of the best schools in the world, etc., right? So the industry is moving more towards expertise, right? So and therefore that effect has also come in the social sector, is to say don't just say social sector, right? Okay, I would listen to you if you have spent this many years in, let's say, education, let's say healthcare, right? So that's one thing, which is why people like me, who have been fortunate enough to reach these big threes, wherein they are actually staffing teams, client teams, wherein there are people who are from general consulting who bring in that business acumen, and there are also people who, like me, who are coming with a lot more social impact expertise, who can actually add value to the clients from a lot more ground up, ecosystem wide. How does social theory of change happens, etc., right?
Yeah.
Like, you go to a random MBA person, pick that person up and ask you, have you ever heard of social return on impact? They would say no, right? So, and these are common vocabulary that the clients are today asking.
Right.
So that's the one of the reason that I feel that's happening. The transition from non-profit and to consulting, I would only say that the lens changes a lot, because in non-profit, depending on your role, your focus is a lot more narrower, I would say, a lot more pinpointed, whereas the lens in the consulting space is a lot more broadened, right? Like, nobody would hire a firm like a BCG to think about a 2 feet problem, never, because that money is not worth spent, right? They would always, like, for an example, they would always hire a firm like BCG or a McKinsey to solve a longer term, futuristic, ambiguous problems,
Right.
so that's where the money is well spent for clients, right? So that's the sort of the lens that changes, that I would say.
As you told that there is some transitioning happening in big threes also. They are looking for specialist, experienced people who are having deeper ground connect also. How do you see this narrative changing in 5 to 10 years down the line?
Yeah, so I feel this would continue to grow. I would say that this would continue to grow, but the matter of fact is also to that pedigree that you bring or the expertise that you bring has to be exceptionally refreshing, right? Because just to also say, my interview was exactly similar to a MBA guy interview, so the skills that I was tested on were similar, right? I was not given any flack because I come from a impact sector, right? So your skills has to be that sharp to be able to crack some of these places, while bringing these expertise, because you don't have a tier 1 MBA, right? So or the other conventional route is you do a tier 1 MBA and then you reach here, right? And even in tier 1 MBA, not everybody lands up in MBBs, right?
That's
Probably
true.
your top 2 to 5% of your class lands up. So yeah, so that's what I would say. My only thing that I would say to people that some of these are gettable. It's not that these are not gettable. It's just that you have to pace yourself and build the right portfolio of skills to be able to reach some of these spaces.
I'm going to ask you last question. You've not done MBA, but you have done a lot of upskilling and developed this business acumen, which is required for these consultancies. So how did you do this? If you can share with our viewers, that would be much helpful, I guess.
Yeah, so I think there are almost three kinds of learning ways that I do, right? Like learning pathways that I probably tread on. So during my pyramid days, I remember I had done a bunch of edX Coursera courses, right? Like as I said, most of these things are self-taught to me. So I mean, like as fundamental as that, like you should not go into a consulting interview without knowing how to build a pivot table in an Excel.
Right.
As simple as that. It's just that you have not prepped well for your interview,
Yeah.
right? And or say for example, you should know how a guesstimate work, right? So that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of Coursera edX kind of courses, and I would say you do 10 random Google search, you will get very good courses on how does consulting interview works, and therefore you can do a lot of these courses, and there are very good courses from big universities like Harvard, Oxford today, who are giving these online courses to almost absolutely free. So that is one. The second, a big chunk of my learning came from actually doing the work itself,
Right.
and actually mindfully doing the work, right? Like one big mantra for me is to say that never repeat the same mistake again, right? Like if somebody has pointed out as basic as saying that your margins need to be aligned in your document, nobody gives a damn look on that, right? But if
Right.
somebody has said to me at one point in time in my career saying कि देखो ये अगर करोगे तो अच्छा दिखता है, so there is no harm in doing that every time that you do it, right? So to be very mindful about how people are giving you feedback on some of the work that you are doing, and be very proactive on asking for feedback, because a lot of times you would learn from your mistakes.
Right.
And then the third is also observation, I think, which is very very underrated. I feel
Right.
a lot of people don't talk about it. I have learned a lot observing people, especially communication.
Communicate.
I feel the way people communicate a particular thing, and then I have always been intrigued and went ahead and asked them saying that आपने ये कैसे frame किया अपने दिमाग में, आप बताओ मुझे, right?
Right.
And if you really observe, you would see that how people are framing, how people are breaking up sentences, how people are thinking more top down, how people are actually using the um, interesting anecdotes to tell their stories, right? So I feel observation can be a very strong powerful tool for you to learn very quickly, and there are so many inspiring people around you that is probably either working or or living with you. You should really be mindfully observing them to be able to pick up those cues as well. So you can also look for Career Edge. That's a LinkedIn channel that they sort of run, right? To see how some of these big three interviews can be cracked.
Coming from tier 2 city and college and traversing this path is truly inspiring. And I must say, a lot of college students, our viewers are tier 2 college students. They're going to pick a lot of lessons from this episode. And also those people on non-profits, those who look for consultancy, they can also take a lot of cues from this episode. So how do you see the role of young people in consultancies?
Yeah, so for example, in Satwa, right, the average age of the organization while I was working was 27. So a lot of young people, right?
Yeah.
I feel consulting organizations, the way they are set up, have a very strong and innate trust on young people, because of the fact that they bring a lot of unbiased opinion about the world, right? Because say for example, a senior managing director who has spent almost, let's say, 20-30 years in his career, they would definitely bring a particular anchored view of how they look at the world or particular problems. That's good, that's important, because that's where you get the wisdom from. But you also want a refreshing energy or refreshing eye who actually bring an unhinged opinion about something that you're trying to solve. So there is a lot of trust today on young people to actually engage in these consulting firms. I think there are two pathways to be able to reach there. I feel that you can take a conventional pathway, which is doing a top tier MBA and then move into these consulting firms. B, I would say if you are not planning for a MBA, you should always think about upgrading your skill set, right, to be able to reach this. And as I said, some of these are learnable, some of these are gettable. I'm a prime example of that. I have self-taught myself, and if you are really willing, there are enough resources outside to be able to get there. So I feel that if you really want to sort of reach some of these places, I would say that you can uh, take a MBA route, or build those portfolio of skills to be able to reach there. And the third thing that I would also say that some of these consulting firms also sort of really like when people come with a bit of experience on ground, especially in the social impact space, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you don't get otherwise, right? So I feel it's fine if you have not started with a consulting career, if you are spending time on ground, because trust me, that's what you would reap on throughout your life. But if you're planning to then transit from wherever you are to this consulting space, these are some of the routes that you can potentially take.
Very inspiring and insightful session. With this, we have come to end of our this podcast. And any last remarks for our young people out there? With this, we will be closing this session.
Oh, so I really also want to thank you, Alok, for really starting this podcast. I feel it's a great initiative that you have started. I have known you for a lot of years now, and I have always been inspired by the sheer amount of enthusiasm for newness that you have. And we have spoken multiple times on something that you want to do by yourself. And I feel this is an amazing way to really bring that awareness for young people out there who are really trying to find their foot in the in the world. The only last remark that I would say is that have that trust on yourself that you would be able to excel through come whatsoever may difficulties. And I would always say that build a circle of people who can actually be your guiding light, or your the best critique or of your work, your professionalism, etc., even individualism, etc. So
Thank you very much for your invaluable time for this session. And for our viewers, if you have come to this end of the episode, I request you to like, subscribe, and share the channel. And if you haven't explored other episodes on this channel, go to this section and explore other episodes as well. Thank you. We are going to close this session. Thank you.
thank you.